all dressed up in bare feet through bogs and fields, our backs to the brightening sun. Hey up, we're running, hey up, we're rousing, hey up, we're a-racing on.
Great stuff.
As a young boy in late 1950s Ballinasloe, I often sat mesmerised by the fireside tales of my grandfather John Colohan and his neighbour Shamie Murray. At a time when cross-country running was the most popular athletic activity in Ireland, both men ran for Ballinasloe Harriers, most of whom came from the parish of Crea. The leader of this team was the famous John F. Black Jack Donlan, a blacksmith from Loughnane. Black Jack had form, having competed for Haddington Harriers in Clonskee, Dublin, where he won and retained an All-Ireland title. His achievements stirred up the locals, and in 1899, at junior and team races held in Dublin's Dolphins Barn, the Harriers cleaned up, with John Joe Joyce, a bricklayer and native of Mulvihill, leading them to victory. 5 weeks later, back in Dolphins Barn for the senior race, Black Jack led for 3 laps but retired halfway, suffering from a broken rib. All was not lost, as Joyce took up the mantle and won, bringing further glory to the first team from Connacht to compete in the All-Irelands. In 1899, at 21 years of age, John Joyce immigrated, along with 2 of my grandfather's sisters, to the USA. They went to Boston while he stayed in New York. Joining the American Athletic Club, he won the national cross-country title in 1902, followed by 3 10-mile indoor titles. In 1904, he represented the USA in the 800 metres at the St. Louis Olympic Games. This being a time when Irish athletes were not allowed to compete for their own country, the Crown still holding sway. Immigration decimated the Harriers. Still, they managed further glory in 1905, with Black Jack's brother Larry finishing well in a race won by Tom Kelly. Local man John Murray remembers a later incarnation of the team.
I had the cross-country team here that we had in 1920. There was 3 of my own uncles. 2 of them ran in it, Michael Murray and Jack Murray. And their coach was a man called Dick Kinney. He was a local teacher, taught in Falty and Moore. And it was said that he and one of my uncles cited to a football match. That time, when you were going to Dublin, the man in the motor car mightn't be in Dublin. You might be in Dublin before him on a bike.
I was as a young boy in the mid-30s or even before, and you were talking about the Donlans. Well, Black Jack, as we knew him, he was one of them, and I used to know at that time that tell me he was Black Jack. Black Jack used to come and he'd come in the evening and he'd have a waistcoat and he'd be searching the pockets and he'd pick out a sweet and he'd give it to me and tell me how I was good or I was bad or I was indifferent. He'd give me the sweet and I'd scrape as much tobacco off it as I could and then put it in my mouth and I'd suck it away for a while. But one evening he says, "Come down to the pub with me for a pint of porter." So I suppose I popped in and said to the mother, and she said, "Go ahead, maybe, you know." And anyway, I went down, and first time I was in Stanton's pub that time. There was a big deep step just inside the door. I remember that particularly. And I went over towards the bar, which was on the left side, and the bar was about, I suppose it must be 5 foot high. That time, that's the height of the bars. And there was high stools that were there. So I was planked up and he lifted up and put on a high stool, and he shouted into Michael Stanton to fill this man a pint of red porter. So I sat up there as proud as punch with a pint of red porter and drank away, and I thought it was great altogether.
The ruins of the Donellan house and forge are still preserved in Loughnane. Tom Ferguson is the present owner of the property. Some artefacts remain, including a gate with the initials JD, Jack Donellan, an athletics hammer, and a 56-pound weight with the initials DD, Dinger Donellan.
Larry was known as the Dinger. He was, as I said before, he was a great judge of horses and ponies, but he always called them a good one. He's a Dinger, like, or a Dinger to go. So he got the nickname of the Dinger. That's how the Dinger come on. Now Larry was a great man for having ponies and a great judge of horses and stuff like that. But he always had a trap and a good trapping pony under it. Anyway, Larry, one day he pulled up outside and he said to me, "Would you come to Shannon Bridge with me?" And we come to Shannon Bridge and we went in beside the Shannon. We went over the bridge, and down between two houses there was a way down into the Callows at the back. And it was down there they had the sports. And whatever was going on that day, they'd be running and jumping and so forth. So Larry, of course, I suppose, was interested in the running that was going on in the things, especially the long distance running that was in them. They'd have anything up to 6 and 7 and 8 and maybe 10 miles around the track at that time.
Kieran Cunningham won an All-Ireland Junior Cross Country Championship in 1905 running with the Ballinasloe Harriers. He was born in this house in the village of Shralay, which is actually situated in County Roscommon. Most of the runners that actually ran with the Ballinasloe Harriers would have been from this area here. 5 miles to the west we have Ballinasloe, and about 12 miles to the east we have Loughnane. There used to be about 50 houses in this area. There's still good remains of the old houses and the old roadway here. I suppose this is where Kieran would have perfected his trade up and down the fields here in Shralay.
Dick Kinney was the school teacher in Faulty School. It was also known as Mount Welcome, I think, that time. It was a school built by Maters, the landlord, to educate the children that was working in it. And he was the teacher. He was the manager at the team. He was very interested in athletics and brought them anywhere and helped them out anywhere he could. Old Ward qualified with 5 others for the Galway team to run in the All-Ireland. He got a letter that one of the team of 6 had gone in for operation for appendix and wouldn't be able to run. He fancied himself to win it, and he wanted to make up the team. But he was out on the street the following morning when Martin Green came. He was working in shortening season, and he used to bring him a can of milk every morning and leave it at the door and continue running on to shortening season, which would be about a mile over. Shortening season was the landlord at that time. And old Ward asked him, "Tell me," he said, "we ever in Dublin?" "Oh no, sir," he said. "Would you like to go?" "Oh God, I'd love to," he said. "But I have no money, you know." He said, "If we got you a free trip, would you run for us next Saturday?" "Jeez, I'd do anything," he said. "You name it, I'll do it." So they got him the ticket to Dublin, and old Ward was fancying himself to win. And he only wanted to start with a full team. So he lost Merton after starting, and when he finished, he thought he'd done well, but he met Merton Green coming back walking, and his clothes on. And he said, Merton, you weren't able to keep going. No, he said, it was first home, and I had my clothes on this long time. And that's how he started. But I came home and I told my father what old Ward told me. And Merton Green was a friend of his at that time. There'd be only about, I suppose, a half mile, 3/4 across the fields to where Merton was born, you know. And he said, he didn't tell you the truth. He said, old Ward fancied himself, he said, and he thought he was only bringing Merton for a stand-in, but Merton surprised him. And he said he went to America after that, and he ran and won several races in America.
When I was young, there was something called rambling used to happen in our home when neighbours would come in. And one gentleman called Shamie Murray used to come in and chat with my grandfather. And they would sit either side of the fire, smoking the pipe, talking about old times. And things like when they used to run, and it seems they were on a team called the Harriers, Ballinasloe Harriers. Now my memory is that Shamien, whose house we used to run into as children, had these medals on his mantelpiece. But there were a little pile of medals sitting up beside razor blades and a few other things. My brother remembers when this Shamien Murray died, when he was laid out. It was the first dead person we had ever seen. And he remembers seeing the medals on the bed beside him. I remember we might be taken into town to a particular pub called Sonny Downey's. And Sonny and his sister, Baby Downey, used to run this little pub. And Sonny used to take great pride every time we visited in showing this photograph of the team of Harriers. And used to point out and show and said, there's your grandfather in that team. And I used to look up and think they were awful old looking men because nearly all of them had big bushy moustaches. Later on, there was a quest for this photograph. We never saw it.
Shamien was an honourable man in the vicinity, and it was nice to have him. And he was a hardy type and very tidy little man. And he often washed his boots here at the Stone Clock in the evening. And there was no brush, get a piece of hay and clean them off, and he was tidy. But he was also a good runner. And he told me a story himself that he ran from a road race from Athlone to Moat, and they were kind of neck and neck towards the end, and he'd have won it except the fellow that was running, or the man that was running with him. I remember Jimmy himself said, put out his hand like that and cut the tape, and then Jimmy had to go second. There was one story he told us. Then of course everyone, when you would start talking about cross-country runners, the name that comes to your mind would be Jack Donlan from Glantown. He was known as the black fella. My uncle knew him in person, and so did my mother, because they'd nearly have gone to school with him. He was just a local fella. And he was a tall, athletic fella, lovely black hair and a tash. A sort of a fella like a Clark Gable of a man.
Carraduff is an old railway station, long since closed, halfway between Ballinasloe and Loughnane. John and Lily Tumelty have lived in the station house for many years and have kept the old buildings intact. It was here that one famous tale of Black Jack took place. The Harriers always travelled by horse and brake from Crea to the railway station in Ballinasloe and thence to Dublin. Having had a few jars the night before one such trip, Black Jack overslept, missing his lift. The team travelled without him, and at their stop at Carraduff Station, 5 miles outside Ballinasloe, Black Jack came panting onto the platform to join them. Being too late to make Ballinasloe, he whipped off his boots and set out across the fields and Cranberry Bog to arrive in the nick of time. The team was greatly annoyed with him, considering him unfit to compete in the race after his run across the bog. When the competition started, Black Jack took his place with the rest of the team. Before too long he was in the lead and went on to win the race.
In my village of Glantan, there is a noted athlete named Black Jack Donellan. In his day, he was a famous runner. He ran for Ireland and England for a 10-mile cross-country race, being first man home for Ireland in that race. He could run any distance from a mile to 10. He won over 50 miles handicap races. He won several championships. He was Connacht champion for a number of years. He's still living there. He's about 65 years of age.
All dressed up in bare feet through bogs and fields, our backs to the brightening sun. Hey up, we're running, hey up, we're rousing, hey up, we're a-racing on. Hey up, we're running, hey up, we're rousing, hey up, we're a-racing on.